Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff. I'm Pete C. Hine, and joining me as always is my old friend and co-host. His eyes, how they twinkle, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks are like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth draws up like a bow, and the beard on his chin is as white as a snow. The stump of a pipe he holds tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircles his head like a wreath. He has a broad face and a little round belly that shakes when he laughs like a bowl full of jelly. He's chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laugh when I see him, in spite of myself. It's Mr. Stephen James Buckley.
You do laugh when you see me, it's true. Almost every time.
That bit's true, at least.
Yeah. That's quite an inaccurate one, that. Usually that
wasn't my best work.
That was quite a...
When I wrote that one, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. It's almost as if you just did that kind of really lazy thing of just like nabbing someone else's work and just sort of shoehorning it in because you couldn't think of anything nice to say about me.
Imagine stooping that low at this time of year.
No, absolutely disgusting. So big one tonight. We're doing a Christmas episode.
Yeah. It's been a while since we did a Christmas episode because we didn't do one last year. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that, but things are dropping off my Christmas tree as we're talking. Like ornaments are falling off, so that's a good sign. We didn't do a Christmas episode last year because the problem is that people only listen to them at Christmas, and so our last Christmas episode we did a really cool one where we did Spirit Box and all the rest of it. And that was, no one really listened to it, I don't think. It's like one of our lowest rated episodes. I'm going to try and boost it again this Christmas. So people should listen to it in conjunction with this one, I think.
Well, I mean, one way of getting people to listen to your Christmas episode is to get two amazing guests on.
That's a good idea. Make my Christmas wish come true.
Should we maybe do that?
Yes.
Who do you think we should have?
I don't know. Who do you think, who would be first on your Christmas list? The first two people on your Christmas list? In joint first place, of course.
Yeah, of course. Well, I don't know. I think I'd probably say Steph Quick and AP Strange, maybe.
Let's see what Father Christmas can bring us.
So listeners will recognise the first of tonight's guests, either from the two previous Vayse episodes she's been in, or from her countless other appearances on many more shows. She's someone we always like to have around for her wit, wisdom, and intolerance of bullshit. She's one of our favourite people in the Weirdosphere, and we're honoured to welcome back writer and researcher Stephanie Quick. Hi, Steph.
Hi.
Hello, Steph.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. I am doing well. We've already had a synchronicity. Because my story involves a ghost who is known for dropping things from the trees that she planted. And we already had something drop off a tree.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is pretty mad.
Amazing.
So we're off to a good start.
Yeah.
Well,
either a synchronicity or a haunting.
Or both.
Synchro haunting.
Yeah. And we have another guest with us who's also a returning champion. Another, to help us celebrate. It's the man with the encyclopedic knowledge of all things unexplained and some knowledge of many things partially explained and no knowledge of things that are fully explained, because where would be the fun in that? It's the maestro of the mysterious, the sultan of the supernatural, and the professor of the paranormal. He's a blogger. He's the man behind the AP Strange's Weird Writings blog, and he's the host of the AP Strange show. It's, hold on, let me just check my notes. It's AP Strange.
Ho, ho, ho.
Hey.
Merry Crimbo to my friends in the UK.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fine. It occurs to me I should be more creative with my project names, but oh well.
It does what it says on the tin, though, you know.
Hey, people
the problem with having a name like Vayse, which we don't actually include on the artwork to our podcast, is that people often don't know what our podcast is, and even if they did know that our podcast was Vayse, they wouldn't know what it was about because Vayse doesn't explain anything. So maybe you're onto something good by clearly stating what all your projects are.
Well, I think Vayse kind of straightens that out a little bit. Or at least it entices people. They have to be involved and untangle the mystery to figure out what you guys are all about.
That's it. Dip their toe in. Well, thanks both for joining us tonight. And, it's a Christmas episode, and the idea that we had for this episode was that we would tell Christmas ghost stories. And I particularly wanted you guys on, not just because we love your work and we love talking to you, but also because one of you is on the West Coast and one of you is on the East Coast. When me and Buckley were talking about this, Buckley then suggested, well, why don't we tell stories? So AP Strange will do one from the East, Steph can do one from the West, and then Buckley will do one from the North, where he was born, the North of England, and I'll do one from the South, where I was born, the South of England. So this is kind of where we've got to with all the cardinal points as we go around. And it occurred to me, having spoken to AP Strange about the idea of Christmas ghost stories a little bit before, that this might not be a tradition in the US at all, the telling of ghost stories on Christmas Eve. So I thought I'd quickly do a quick rundown on the history of this. Then people will kind of have a better idea of what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it. We're not just messing with Christmas. It is actually a tradition over here. So the tradition of telling ghost stories around the winter solstice must go back for centuries and centuries. But this was originally an oral tradition, so no one really knows how long back it goes because no one was writing it down. But it's based on supernatural beliefs that people have that surround the very short days and the very long nights and the cruelty of nature during midwinter. And the Germanic celebration of Yule may or may not have actually been a festival of the dead. No one really knows what it was there for, but that is definitely one element of it. But the actual telling of ghost stories on Christmas Eve became a hugely popular tradition in Britain during the 18th century, because what you had at that time was a huge confluence of things, as always. It was a massive time of change, and the Industrial Revolution was happening, and that resulted in the creation and the progress of capitalism, and that became pervasive through British society. So then you had the creation of what would become the middle classes, which were literate, educated people with enough money to be comfortable and enough time on their hands to need something to occupy them in the cold, dark winter nights. So this was pre-TV, pre-electrical lighting, pre-radio. These nights were a time when all the family would gather around the fire. Can we put some log fire ambience on again here, Buckley? Excellent. And people would talk to each other and they would try to entertain each other. And the archetypal example of this, which is ingrained in history throughout the world now, is the Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. So Dickens was from a middle-class family who fell on hard times, and his father even ended up in debtor's prison. And Dickens himself had to leave school at 12, pawn all of his books and get a job in a shoe blackening factory, which is probably the most Dickensian thing I've ever heard in my life. So you can see why he went hard, and that story in particular goes hard against the moneylenders and sympathizes with the downtrodden. But during the Victorian age, having a big celebration at Christmas was really taking off, and Queen Victoria and Prince Albert popularized the Christmas tree and revived the interest in Christmas carols with the publication of books of them. So people were really starting to celebrate Christmas a lot more. And Dickens had already actually written, as part of the Pickwick Papers, a story called The Story of the Goblins Who Stole a Sexton, which is about a misanthropic sexton who's visited by goblins at Christmas, which show him the past, the present, and the future. So this was in actually 1836. So by 1843, A Christmas Carol was published and the goblins had become ghosts. And it's interesting that it was first published on the 19th of December, 1843, and had sold out by Christmas Eve that year. And by January 1844, there were already bootleg versions of it being printed, and it was actually being pirated. So Dickens then sued them for copyright infringement and won. So he's kind of like the Metallica of the Victorian era. And it was around this time that you started having steam-powered printing presses, and they were making printing a lot more affordable, and books became more commonplace. So lots of people were reading, and this story really helped, further gather popularity in cities and towns of Christmas, which had been a kind of rural thing before then, celebrated in the country, but it hadn't really evolved to its position in cities and towns. And so the book really reinforced a lot of the old traditions and cemented them into the British culture. And it also helped to emphasize this feeling of generosity of spirit, which we in our kind of moments attribute to Christmas today. So A Christmas Carol became a massively popular book, and Dickens not only wrote more Christmas stories that involved ghosts, but he started editing and publishing other people's ghost stories at Christmas, and the whole thing became a sensation, and loads of authors were at it. But as AP Strange told me last time I spoke to him, this never really caught on so much in America. And there's a few reasons that I think that could be, having done minimal research as always. One was that I think that the settlers wanted to leave their old superstitions behind when they came from Britain to America, so they wanted to kind of start again. And plus, the people who were coming over at that time, very early on, they were kind of Puritans who frowned on tales of the supernatural getting mixed up in with the religious holiday at the time. Which is weird, really, because I always think the Nativity is probably the most supernatural story ever told, including sort of the demigod being born and the wise men being led to him by a light in the sky. But I think that's probably a discussion for another time. And there was also what came over to America wasn't just British culture, of course. There was a confluence of cultures that were all mixed up there. But I think the main reason from my research is that Americans went really, really hard on Halloween. And that became the time for ghost stories in the US. And then as American culture became more pervasive over here, it also started to dwindle in Britain. And then what really killed it off in Britain was the first two world wars, which then I say the first two world wars, like expecting another one to start anytime now. But the wars really killed it off because no one wanted to think about death at Christmas anymore because so many people were dying in their hundreds of thousands. But in Britain, tradition was revived by the BBC with a series called A Ghost Story for Christmas, which started in 1971. And more than half of the original run of this series was stories by M.R. James. And M.R. James actually used to read his ghost stories to friends and colleagues on Christmas Eve at King's College, Cambridge. So it kind of came full circle then. And his stories such as Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad, have nothing to do with Christmas at all, other than that is the time that they were told. So I know that was long and extremely detailed.
It was 2 minutes, I believe, was the time that you gave us for that.
Yeah,
you said it'll be about 2 minutes.
Than that.
And I was thinking 2 minutes, 2 Hine minutes. 2 Hine minutes are probably about Hine minutes, probably about 5 minutes, I think.
Yeah. It's like the opposite of dog years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad I got all that off my chest.
Yeah, that's all fascinating stuff. Yeah.
So, what does Christmas mean to you guys?
Well. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan. I like Christmas, you know. Growing up, for me, dropping things here, just like a Christmas tree. For me, growing up, it was always like Christmas Eve was a big deal. And that's when I would always get together with like my mom's side of the family. My folks were together, but we'd go see her family on Christmas Eve and my dad's family on Christmas Day. And that was kind of how we always did things. Yeah, I don't know. Santa Claus, I'm kind of all in with Santa Claus. I still believe in Santa Claus.
Have you ever seen Santa Claus?
Yeah. I wrote a book about it when I was in first grade.
Yeah.
One of the earliest things I ever wrote was a book called...
Can you give us a summary?
Well, it was just called like, I Saw Santa, I think. And so, I mean, basically what I think happened, this is the mundane reality of it probably, is that my folks had like a Santa hat, and my dad used to like to goof off and wear it when we'd go to the Christmas party or whatever. And he was probably wearing the hat when he came up to my bed and put a stocking at the end of it, because he'd stuff the stocking with candies and gifts and leave it at the foot of my bed. And I probably woke up enough to see him running away wearing the hat. But like, I was convinced I actually saw Santa in my room, like making a break for it, you know? So I wrote this little book as like, I don't know, a 6-year-old.
Yeah, get the proof down.
Yeah, and it's like thinking about it now, I think about it like the contact e-books. Like I rode a flying saucer, but for me it was like 6-year-old me being like, I saw Santa. I saw him. I really did.
Eyewitness account from on the ground.
Yeah. What about you, Steph? Have you seen Santa?
I've been Santa. Well, I'm always interested in Santa as kind of like a trickster and kind of almost like a ritual initiation society. I mean, you go from believing in Santa here in the United States as a small child because, you know, these treat and presents show up for you, and you haven't seen them before. They're obviously not from your parents. They have special wrapping paper. You put carrots and cookies and milk out for Santa and his reindeers at Christmas Eve, and then when you wake up in the morning, they're gone. Then you reach a certain age, and you realize, oh, that was all bullshit. There's no such thing as Santa Claus. It's just mom and dad. But then when you get older, you realize, yes, there is a Santa Claus. And and then you get like the greater initiation into being Santa Claus. I lived next door. It was like a ranch style house in Pleasant Hill, California. And the guy who lived there, he and his had built a small, like an additional, like they call it a mother-in-law unit, a small apartment. So we lived in a small apartment next door, and we had a lot of attic space. And so his daughter, Doreen, lived there and with him, Jack. And they had like a huge Irish Catholic family. They were always having all these huge, Thanksgiving, St. Patrick's Day, Christmas. It was a lot of fun. They knew everyone. But Doreen had a son, and so the whole time he was growing up, from the time he was like 2 or 3, she'd have like his normal presents, and then she'd buy his presents from Santa and the special wrapping paper and tags and ribbons and everything from Santa. And of course, these kids were very inquisitive, so he'd be like tearing the house apart looking for all this stuff. But what she would do is she would leave all this stuff in our dryer, which is right next to our front door. And I'd take it from the dryer and put it up in the attic. So he'd be sitting there, like 8 years old, just like, we would just be dying laughing because you see him and he's looking everywhere, you could tell. He just can't find anything. And then, on Christmas morning, he has like, a dozen presents. They're all from Santa. So anyway, he had a lot of cousins. And so before he went to middle school, his one cousin had to pull him aside and say, okay, this is the deal. Because he like absolutely stone cold, hard up, believed in Santa because he had all the evidence. So for
Amazing.
me, so, that is part of Christmas here in the United States, at least. It's a lot of fun, just, doing the stuff for the kids and becoming Santa.
Buckley, you were born on Christmas Day.
I was. So my feelings towards Christmas I don't know. I can't. People say, what's it like being born on Christmas Day? But I wouldn't know what it's like to not be. I've only been born once, to my knowledge. So I can't really compare it to anything. So I don't really know. But
just like Jesus said in the Bible.
Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, I know like people make a big deal of birthdays. It's like, oh, it's my birthday. Or whatever, and it's like I don't feel like that at all. It's like so. If anything, Christmas has just diminished my birthday. Really,
Christmas is taken from you.
Christmas is taken from me, not given. But I did remember one thing which is sort of relevant in the school, in primary school, like in the school plays and stuff at Christmas, the nativity plays. For the first few years at school, I was always a wise man every time. Wise man. Yeah,
nice.
Don't know why. It's ironic, really, isn't it? But always one of the magi.
It occurred to me whilst we were just talking about Christmas then that we've actually invited the 2 people onto the show with the coolest voices that I know, which is going to make our voices sound all the more boring and monotonous and dorky as we talk tonight.
Did that occur to you whilst I was speaking just then?
Yeah.
Somehow it popped into his head.
We shot ourselves in the foot here. This could be our last episode.
I could put some effects on our voices if you like.
Yeah, make us really booming, like a big sort of like proclamation type voice. Yeah. I saw Santa once, of course. Naturally, I was driving back I wasn't driving, but I was a young boy in the back of the car coming back from church. I was a Catholic, so we'd been to midnight mass or whatever, or some equivalent. And I was there, my parents were in the front and I was in the back with my aunt. And my aunt was saying, okay, keep looking out for Santa, keep looking out for Santa. So I kept looking out. We were driving over the hills in Clyton, which is sort of out in sort of the country. And then I did. I was like, oh, there he is. There's Santa. And like, I can't really remember what it was that I saw, but I just remember that my aunt just absolutely couldn't believe it. She said, like, keep an eye out for Santa. And I was like, yeah, I got him. I've seen him now. So that always sort of sticks in my mind as sort of the time that I realized that Santa was real. Okay, so we're going to tell ghost stories. We're going to go around northeast, southwest. So, Buckley, you were born in the north of England. Give us a story.
Okay, so I'm going to preface this by saying that I perhaps didn't understand the assignment. So the story that I have brought to the table is not actually a Christmas ghost story.
No, it doesn't have to be.
Oh, it doesn't have to be,
it doesn't
right?
have
Okay.
to be. Yeah, that's what I was saying about M.R.
James.
Like, these stories have nothing to do with Christmas.
Yeah, so
it was
it's
Dickens, really, who fused Christmas with the ghost stories.
It's not Christmassy, but
we're supposed to have a ghost in our story?
Well, actually, to be honest, mine doesn't really have a ghost either. The ghost bit is very, very like tenuous. It's more like a sort of old story, but you'll see. It is relevant, and so it's set in Cumbria, in a place called Muncaster Castle. So Cumbria is in the north, the very north of England, just before you get to Scotland, and it's the same county where the alternative Vayse happened in the Halloween episode. So it's the same kind of part where the Lake District is.
Where you were born, isn't it?
No, I was actually born in Lancaster.
You were born in Lancaster, then you moved
up to Cumbria,
right,
and then came back. So
that's where alternate universe Buckley died.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go. Behind one of Cumbria's most light-hearted traditions lies a very dark tale. Muncaster Castle, near Ravenglass, recruits its own jester every year in the accumulation of a competition that celebrates the art of tomfoolery. But the history that inspired this annual clowning around leads us back to a distinctly grisly story of murder and revenge. The Pennington family, who owns Muncaster Castle, has lived there for more than 800 years. Several centuries ago, the family employed a jester called Tom Skelton, believed to be the original Tom Fool, who is said to have inspired Shakespeare's Joker in King Lear. But if folklore is to be believed, then Skelton was more than just a harmless clown. Apparently, he would sit under the chestnut tree on the Cannon Bank, which now bears his name, and if people asked him directions and he didn't like the look of them, he would send them en route over the estuaries, bound to lead them into quicksand.
Classic prank.
Yeah, that's so funny.
I know, but this is why I had to include it. So this jester is not a very nice jester. He's a bit of a prick. Doesn't like the look of them, and then I knew you'd like that. I knew you'd like it. So his main story is recorded in The Remains of John Briggs, a compilation of tales and essays put together by Briggs, a former editor of the Westmoreland Gazette and Lonsdale magazine, published in 1825. The story goes that the unmarried daughter of Sir Alan Pennington, who lived in the castle at the time, sneaked out one night to go to a dance in the local village. Dressed as a shepherdess, Hellwise Pennington disguised her identity and rebuffed the advances of a pushy local known as Wild Will of Whitbeck. Instead, she danced with the carpenter's son, Dick, a servant at Muncaster Castle and who was secretly her lover. When a local knight who wanted to marry Pennington found out from Wild Will, he enlisted Skelton to extract his revenge on the carpenter's son. The jester, who already believed the young man had stolen money from him, was more than willing to help. The fool's errand was to behead the carpenter's son with his own axe while he slept. So he did this, I'm assuming, and then he said to the other servants after doing it, I have hid Dick's head under a heap of shavings, and he will not find that so easily when he awakes, as he did my shillings. So how much of the story is rooted in truth and how much is the invention of folklore is impossible to tell. The current owners of the castle believe that Tom is still residing there, and they attribute most of the strange happenings there to him, especially the more sinister activities. He is often felt or heard, but he is never seen. Skelton was supposedly the last fool employed by the Penningtons at Muncaster Castle, but several hundred years on, the present-day family, having not learned their lesson obviously, has resurrected the old tradition, and the modern-day Muncaster fools are paid in beer. And that's the end of the story. So yeah, they do. Currently, they still have a fool at Muncaster Castle, who, and I've actually been to Muncaster Castle
as a fool.
In a manner of speaking, it was a wedding, so I probably behaved quite foolishly. But
you didn't lose your head, so
I nearly did in the taxi home. I nearly did because someone slammed the door and it was like a sliding door, and my head apparently I brought my head in and I just missed getting decapitated. So
wow,
I don't know, but
Tom didn't like the look of you either.
No, well, exactly, yeah. It's an interesting story because we've got, like I say, there's very little ghost stuff in it. The ghost stuff, it's almost like we need a good story to tack on to make the castle spooky.
But I realised that when I was looking for ghost stories myself, is that the haunting is such a small part of it. It's almost like the punchline at the end of a joke, isn't it? To get a good ghost story, you need a good build-up. And they're nearly always built around some sort of romance or a quarrel between family or a quarrel between...
it's relatable stuff, isn't it? And I think with that one though, it's there's still there's a painting, if you look it up, there's a painting of him, of this jester guy. It's really creepy. And I suppose what struck me about it was the whole sort of idea. I think we talked before about Ligotti and his thing with jesters and clowns, puppets and stuff like that. And it's it just kind of tied into that a little bit. And just the whole clown jester kind of fool idea sort of resonated with me a little bit in terms of, I just thought it'd be an interesting kind of, I don't know, just a bit different there. But yeah, nothing to do with Christmas. But I suspect, he may have done this near Christmas. I don't know. The dance might have been a Christmas dance. You never know. What does everyone think?
There's always this idea of unjustness, or how society has these expectations and how individuals are trying to, especially from that era, navigate their way through society's expectations. Like the young lady of the castle who is expected to marry for business purposes, essentially, but actually follows her heart, and then, or even just lust. And then, no one likes that. So this guy gets axed, but of course they don't want to kill her because she's still useful to them. And then this whole guy who's kind of outside of society and just hates everyone.
Sends him into quicksand.
I wonder if the area where the quicksand was haunted.
We've got tons of quicksand up in the north, though, don't we? Because all of the bay going down near Lancaster, where Buckley was born, is quicksand, going up Morecambe Bay. And there was a big thing about cocklers over on Morecambe Bay who'd gone to pick cockles and just got stuck, and the tide sort of rushes in and drowns them. I bet there'll be loads of hauntings around that coast, because some of the tidal behaviour is really vicious around there.
Are you saying that I could have picked a better story? Is that what you're saying?
Just take notes for next time. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, okay. There's of all the stories, there's some great stories in that area. You choose the one about the clown. You choose the one about the jester.
Well, that is on brand for Steph and I. So.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah. There's also the trickster element, which is there, which I really like. The jester is the embodiment of the trickster, isn't it? The way that in old times the jester could get away with things that other people couldn't by embodying the spirit of the archetype.
The jester would be the only person who could criticize the king or take the piss out of the king or something like that. So sort of there's he's got the kind of that to his character. But obviously they're just kind of getting him to do the dirty work. He's almost a little bit kind of Luciferian in that respect. Just sort of like he's doing the stuff that nobody else wants to do. You know, he's doing the stuff that's sort of, you know, the people, like Steph was saying, in kind of polite society or whatever, wouldn't want to dirty their hands doing that.
Yeah.
So they get the jester to do it.
It reminds me of when I was doing stand-up comedy, and every stand-up comedian was mentally ill, you know, like, or a narcissist, or, you know, like all of them would have beheaded you for a few shillings, just like in that story. Probably myself included.
Sent you over to the quicksand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was more my style.
Yeah, sneaky.
Yeah, there is something about that though. The idea of the clown, you know, like the embodiment of the archetype, which goes beyond human morals in a way, you know, is outside of society, and I find that whole thing really creepy. Yeah, great story though. I love that, especially the quicksand bit. I'm going to be thinking about that.
Yeah, the quicksand bit. I knew you'd like that bit. It's just like he didn't like the look of them, so he was like, "Oh yeah, just the castle's over there, chaps."
Let's go to the east. AP Strange.
Okay, coming to you from the east of the United States, that is.
Were you born there as well?
Yes, I've always lived here and I've never left.
Right.
I was born in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I've never lived anywhere else, any other state anyway. And New England is, you know, the 5 states that make up the Northeast of the United States is like my stomping ground. I've been all through it. So I haven't traveled extensively, but I'm very familiar with like my corner of the country.
Yeah. Is New England, is that around the area that Stephen King writes about a lot?
Yes. Yeah. So Stephen King lived for the longest time in Bangor, Maine. So the 5 states of New England, for anyone listening that doesn't know, is Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. So I think that's 5. That's 5. Sometimes parts of New York kind of get lumped in, especially like upstate, northern New York, because they border on Vermont and Massachusetts, but and Connecticut. Yeah, I mean, that's officially New England there. I lost track of what the question. Oh, Stephen King. Yeah. So Stephen King, Stephen King was from Bangor, Maine. But also H.P. Lovecraft came from Providence, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So much so that he built an identity with the city. Like he's like, Providence is me, you know? So, so we have a long storied spooky history here.
Salem, is that around that area?
Salem is in Massachusetts, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have like the Betty and Barney Hill encounter happened in New Hampshire, so that's close. Massachusetts has the Bridgewater Triangle. It also has like the Dover Demon, the witch trials. We have a bunch of vampire stories in New England. That's an interesting history. Some of the earliest Bigfoot sightings were kind of up in the northern woods in Maine, from lumberjacks that were up there. So there was sea serpents off the coast, Gloucester sea serpent, the one at the mouth of the Connecticut River. There's one off the coast of Maine. You know, So we got a little bit of everything here,
Wow.
you know. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff in New England.
There's a mini synchronicity there as well, because the story I'm going to tell later is based in Hampshire, the old Hampshire in England.
Well, that's the thing, is everywhere in New England we stole all the names from England or Ireland or Scotland. Like all our names, and every state in New England has their own. But some of the names too are taken from the indigenous names of the places that were here. So it's a mix and match, and sometimes you're surprised at which one it turns out to be. So, but I mean, when you see a name like Lake Moosalooka-Maguntic, you kind of have a good idea that that's probably the native name for it.
Yeah, we've not got one of those over here.
Well, anyway, I'm rambling. I could talk about New England all day. Because I've been to all these places. I love traveling around and seeing it all. It's a beautiful part of the country. And I had some friends visiting in Maine at one point, wanted to see some weird spots. And it was a hard sell to get them to go to a lighthouse. But I'm like, you need to go to the coast and see a lighthouse. Like, the Maine coastline is one of the most beautiful things in the world, in my limited exposure to the world.
Do you have sinking sand there?
No. Most of the things aren't trying to kill you in my part of the world, which is also kind of nice if you think about it.
So do you have a ghost story for us from New England then?
I do. Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had like the whole Eastern coast to choose from. And I was like, but I live in New England, and like New England's loaded with ghosts. But then every time I thought, much like what you were saying, Peter, is anytime I thought of a story, I'd be like, yeah, but everybody knows that's not true. You know, like that's just for the kids, you know, and things like that. So I had this one that just kept coming to mind, and I've looked into it several times in my life, and I've never actually been there. I've been to the town it takes place in, but the story is just so cool because it's got a lot of layers to it and a lot of legend and mythology. So I hope you enjoy the tale of the ocean-born Mary House. Here we go. It's 1930s in a sleepy New Hampshire town nestled in the foothills of the surrounding mountain ranges. An insurance salesman makes his rounds and spots what he thinks will be a nice prospect, a large mansion that looks as though it had seen better days. Approaching the house, he is greeted at the door by a tall woman with red hair and a striking appearance. As he introduces himself and prepares his pitch, she lets him in, then promptly walks away. She never returns, at least not while the man is there, and he's left standing awkwardly with his briefcase in the vestibule. After a time, he leaves, deciding against venturing further into the house, where perhaps he was unwanted. Later, he learned no such resident was living at the house at the time, at least not the way we consider living. A similar occurrence years later, a woman who came to see the house once before was surprised to find that this time a much older woman had answered the door. On her first visit, inspired by the tales of ghostly activity, she had been shown in by a younger lady with a shock of red hair. She had returned to see the rest of the house, claiming she had only seen part of it the first time. The elderly Mrs. Roy, who lived there with her son, had to inform this visitor that she had already met the ghost on her first visit. So, more such stories are recorded. The New Hampshire State Police encountered a woman dressed in clothing of a bygone era, stopping to see if she needed help, only to see her vanish before their eyes. Reports around 1920 of respectable citizens who would rather not have their names on record saw a spectral horse and carriage outside the mansion, which at that time was abandoned, and the apparition of a woman in white leaping from it, bounding to a nearby well, lifting the cover and slamming it down. Such are the tales of the ocean-born Mary House in Henniker, New Hampshire. But to get a fuller picture of the legend, we need to go back about 200 years to the birth date of its namesake. The story goes that a ship filled with Scottish and Irish immigrants called the Wolf was nearing the end of its Atlantic journey when danger struck in the form of an opposing ship flying a black flag. The small crew of the boat was no match for the pirates, who promptly boarded her, subdued the captain and crew, and proceeded to ransack and rob the vessel. All of that came to a sudden halt with an unexpected interruption, the sound of a crying infant from below deck. Don Pedro Valences, in charge of the marauding crew, went down to investigate and found the wife of the Wolf's Captain Wilson holding back tears as she tried to comfort her newborn child. The baby had entered the world at sea only 3 days prior to the encounter with the dread pirate and his crew, and the sight of such innocence had a transformative effect on Don Pedro. Perhaps the newborn sparked some memory in the sea bandit's heart, or the helplessness of the situation softened his cruel demeanor. Maybe there are superstitions among pirates and old salts about children born at sea. Maybe he had lost a child himself. No one can know what motivated the man in the year 1720, when he asked in a wavering voice what the child's name was. The captain's wife, hailing from Londonderry, Ireland, and a good Catholic woman, replied that since there was no priest aboard, and the baby hadn't been baptized yet, she hadn't been named. In some versions of events, Valanches simply offered to let everyone live under the condition that the baby be named Mary after his mother. The more romantic version is that the pirate christened the young girl himself, sprinkling seawater on her head and saying, "In the name of my sainted mother, I christen thee ocean-born Mary. Live, child, and may you prosper." And to the great relief of all immigrants aboard, the pirates released the crew and returned the stolen goods before sailing away. Before long, however, the pirates returned. One could only imagine the terror of seeing this grim vessel come back after having been so merciful. Had it all been just a sick joke? Instead, Valanches boarded the Wolf a second time, bearing a gift for young Mary, some green silk which he said she should wear on her wedding day. The Wilsons landed in the New World and made a home for themselves in a town with a familiar name. Londonderry, New Hampshire is where ocean-born Mary grew up, and found a man named James Wallace to marry, eventually having 4 children of her own. When James died after nearly 40 years of marriage, Mary went to live with her son in Henniker. The legend says that the old pirate, who spared her life and named her so many years prior, had settled there and built a large house. Further, that Mary and her children went to live there. Further still, there are tales about buried pirate treasure on the property. To fall back on the romantic narrative again, it is said that old enemies had resurfaced at the Henniker manse to settle a score with the old brute. Perhaps they came in search of their share of said treasure, but whatever the case, Don Pedro was run through with a cutlass and discovered by Mary as he choked his dying wish to be buried with the treasure under the hearth in the home. These wishes were allegedly carried out, and perhaps through a combination of cursed booty and pirates' command that Mary never leave the house, we are left with a history of spectral apparitions and paranormal occurrences. Pirate lore is filled with stories of buried chests and gold doubloons and jewels, guarded by the phantom of whoever was slain for that purpose. Off the coast of Portsmouth, there lies the Isles of the Shoals, where just such a legend has persisted about the 14th bride of Blackbeard, guarding a treasure there. Some accounts claim that Don Pedro was just a Spanish-affected alias of an Englishman named Philip Babb, and just such a name can be found on documents to establish a township on those isles from the 17th century. The islands there also became a temporary place of exile for Thomas Morton, the founder of Merrymount, a colony in what is now Quincy, Massachusetts. Morton was exiled for his anti-Puritan screeds, and his life at Merrymount was very pagan by early American standards. The community had good relationships with the indigenous people there, and also welcomed pirates. One imagines Morton saw old friends as he waited on an island to be brought back to England for trial. To bring us to more modern times, it seems these stories really took hold when the Henniker house was purchased by a man called L.M.A. Roy. He and his mother Flora, who was mentioned earlier, had plenty of experiences of their own. Mr. Roy never claimed to have seen the ghost of Mary, but had experienced poltergeist effects and claimed his mother had seen her spectral form. The ghostly carriage had been witnessed by many, often on Halloween, which is very close to the anniversary of James Wallace's death in 1781. Incidentally, by that time, the aforementioned Isles of the Shoals had been evacuated and commandeered by the colonial forces for use in the Revolutionary War. After that occupation, they stood largely abandoned until much later. It's worth noting here that Henniker is a significant distance from the coast, and involves travel through imposing terrain that must have been all the more wild and uninhabited at the time. This is where the legend starts to fade out, like a spectral woman in white vanishing before your eyes. Modern historians are quick to point out that the home owned by the Roys was built by Ocean-born Mary's son and used during the Revolution as a base of operations. Mary herself never lived there, instead living with her other son in the same town following her husband's death. The earliest reference I could find to the pirate provenance of the old home is a newspaper article from 1930, reporting that townsfolk thought the home was much too extravagant to have been built by a country boy in the New Hampshire hills. They speculate that a well-to-do seafaring man had built it. Naturally, the most romantic and satisfying conclusion is that this wealthy old salt would be the very same bloodthirsty buccaneer who had a singular moment of grace in 1720 and had come to retire and provide for the child he had saved in her widowhood. The same 1930 article claims that men had investigated the well on the property, thinking there to be treasure in it, since most of the sightings of Mary had drawn attention to it. The stones of the well collapsed and injured the men, adding credence to the idea of a cursed treasure. Much later, after the elder Roy had passed, famed paranormal investigator Hans Holzer caught wind of the legend and had something of a fractured investigation there. A medium he refers to only as Lori found herself drawn there time and again. He eventually got frustrated with her and brought in his preferred medium, Sybil Leek, with her pet boa constrictor in tow for some reason. Holzer collected more accounts, such as that of an accidental fire in a stairwell putting itself out as though beaten with a blanket, of phantom voices, and of course, of apparitions fitting the description of our tall Scots-Irish woman in white. He comes to no conclusions with his investigation, saying, "Only time will tell, but some ghost stories really don't work that way." I haven't told you the truth in this telling of the ocean-born Mary house because there's very little truth to be found. The fact that she never lived there or owned the place, and the fact that historians can point to it having been built by her son instead of a pirate, is enough for most to discard the whole tale. We can find references to a person called Philip Babb in association with the series of islands known for pirates, but there's no proof about who this Don Pedro really was or whether he existed at all. If he had been a real man, and supposing the story about him sparing a ship in 1720 is true, what association would he even have with the Henniker house? If we know he couldn't have built it, what if the paranormal events around the property have nothing to do with pirates, or with Mary, or with the buried treasure? Conversely, what if Mary's son had brought treasure from the Isle of Shoals, and along with it brought the 14th bride of Blackbeard, who everyone just assumed was his mother? Ocean-born Mary is a ghost, in the purest sense of the word. Legends such as those that grew from her extraordinary birth are everywhere, and historical facts and points of data do little to diminish their spooky power. We invent these narratives innocently enough, and they grow organically in spite of reasoning away by naysayers. When the spectral horse-drawn buggy arrives, it's our choice to ride it or walk away. But like the cries of an infant newly born out of the sea emanating from below deck, the ghosts of the past and phantasms of our own creation call on us to consider our course. Whether it leads to salvation or downfall is for the fates to decide. That's my tale.
Nice.
Yeah.
What a lovely pirate. A really pleasant pirate.
He's a Christmas pirate.
Yeah, that'd be it.
I like it. It raises like a really interesting point, which I think is going to come into play when I tell my story as well, which is almost like sometimes they start with a haunting and then work backwards. You know, the story comes after the haunting, you know, the haunting's there and people are so desperate to explain it. You know, this romanticized story becomes attached to it. And I think that is a lot of what we were saying after Buckley's story about how the interesting part of a lot of these stories aren't the supernatural elements necessarily. It's the lead up to what's going to happen. You know, it's the stuff about the pirate. It's the stuff about the house being built and all the rest of it. And there's a lot less emphasis on the horse-drawn carriage and the white woman and so on.
The pirate really reminded me of the story on The Princess Bride about the dread pirate Roberts.
Yeah.
Just the way that he was like this kind of quite friendly pirate who wanted to retire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's always the outlaws showing mercy, right? or fighting for, I hate to bring this up to current events, but the idea that you have powerful people who have outrageous amounts of money and influence and the power of life and death over the ordinary people, and the idea of, let's say, a Robin Hood figure who balances the scales a little bit. And how that person can become quite popular. Because everyone has had the feeling of that, the boot on the neck, right?
Right, the powerlessness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the system not adjusting for it.
Yeah. So you might have to have someone else adjust the claims for you.
Yeah.
As it were. But yeah, I mean, I think there's the idea that like Bonnie and Clyde, these other Al Capone, these outlaws who actually work to against when the system has become unjust, that they are there to kind of shake things up.
It's weird, isn't it, how heroes like that are sort of timeless. You Robin Hood, Al Capone, Bonnie and Clyde, and all that sort of thing, and yet they're seen as heroes, and yet the system still doesn't change. There's no heroes, or there's very few heroes around now. It seems
some people get really nervous for a short time. But.
Sometimes those people change. Actually, that tips the hat to my ghost story. But even like Al Capone, now things here in the United States may be changing back, but he had I believe a niece who died from drinking tainted milk. And so Capone was able to use his money to help to institute food safety standards. He lobbied Congress, right? So now for a better part of a century here in the United States, we've had a set of, agency to inspect food and set certain standards for safety and purity. And that was due to Alfonso Capone's lobbying efforts based on what he saw, because the milk used to be, it was not pasteurized. It would be adulterated with, they just put chalk in there. So it was look white, just terrible things. And so it's possible some of these heroes make a difference. Some of they don't. But if you never try, right, then nothing will ever happen. So.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these stories are ways of keeping alive these possibilities for a different type of a future by looking at how things used to be different in the past.
Yeah, it kind of made me think of just the whole thing of the boats coming over with the immigrants. It kind of reminded me of the whole like American Gods thing, kind of the idea that the different cultures brought over their own gods, but as well as their own stories and their own kind of and the red-haired woman is probably more of a sort of Scottish Irish kind of story, isn't it? That's kind of come over, and that's sort of an archetype that probably originates more from that part of the world.
Jack Parsons as well.
And we nowadays, like in the general Western Europe, of course, racism is more focused against people of darker skin tones, let's say, people of color, from the Middle East or from Latin America, Asian people, all that. And you would think someone with pale skin and red hair would be considered white. But in the time when that story was starting, at least, supposedly, that was the time of, even up until the early 20th century, late 19th century here in the United States, no Irish need apply. The Irish were considered less white, and they were discriminated against because of their race. So there's this whole story here in the United States, who gets to be considered white or part of like normal America or a citizen. And with recent events, we're still fighting that since in addition to all the racist policies that certain factions are trying to instantiate here in the United States, we also have people wanting to, for example, roll back the 19th Amendment, which gives women the right to vote. So Yeah, so there's always this fight because who gets to be a full person with agency and human rights and who doesn't? Who gets to be bought into the existing power structures and who don't? And ghost stories very often arise and persist around people who have been left out, don't have a legal recourse or social recourse. There's a lot of ghost stories in Britain, for example, about young women who become pregnant and then are murdered by the men who impregnated them to avoid consequences, right? Usually it's like a lower class woman. And so then these women really don't get any social or legal justice due to the privilege of these men who murdered them. And so they end up haunting because there needs to be this,
100%. I mean, I think that was the one that I told at the Halloween episode 2023. I think there was a similar idea that I think
the Bannister doll one.
The Bannister doll, yeah. There's some young woman had, I think, become pregnant from an affair with someone, and so her father took her out into the street and beat her to death, basically. And you know, I think a lot of stories have that very strong theme of, you know, injustice.
Yes.
You wonder sort of who's telling these stories when a story originates like that. You wonder if the stories are told by women primarily, you know, to children as you know, back then. Yeah, well, if you think about sort of back then, generally the woman's role was seen as being like the caregiver, looking after the children or whatever. So they maybe were more likely to be the person responsible for the telling of stories and therefore the propagation of stories. So that could, to some degree, kind of explain why there's so many of these stories that involve horrible things happening to women, because it was women that were telling them, to get the stories out there, you know, to say, like, to kind of almost report on what was happening.
And also to sort of scare their kids into realizing what the right thing to do is.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, there's this whole, kind of like social, cultural functions of folklore and myth and ghost stories. And, well, like, what's the one, La Llorona? I'm not pronouncing that correctly. In Spanish, the idea that there's this wailing woman, if you get near water at night, she'll drown you if you're children. Now, it could be based on something, but on the other hand, it's like a way to scare kids to try and keep them from doing stupid kid stuff that could end up going a lot more, you know, you don't want your kids to drown, so you're trying to scare them away from
we have
doing
the same
stupid
thing
stuff.
Here, I've got the canal runs just down, and in the north we have a story about Jenny Greenteeth, and if you get too close to the canals or the rivers, she reaches out and pulls you in. And that's what kids get told in the north of England.
Yeah, so it's like these similar functions, and there's a bunch of, like you say, intersecting functions.
When we were talking before about the bit of a change of gear here, but when we were talking before about the pilgrims coming over and so on, I wanted to ask you guys about Thanksgiving and how much of Christmas's thunder do you think that Thanksgiving steals for you guys? Like, do you use that more? Because I was in America for Thanksgiving once. I was in New York, and it was absolutely, it was just like Christmas over here. You know, all the shops were shut, the massive meals, everyone was at home with their families. We don't have Thanksgiving at all here. There's nothing on that day. Black Friday is a bigger deal than Thanksgiving here because there's just nothing happens. You know, there's no holiday or anything, and we eat turkey on Christmas. And so, which one holds kind of the weight of the biggest celebration or the biggest family gathering in the US? Is it Christmas or?
I think Christmas is a much bigger deal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a whole seasonal thing. It's like Thanksgiving is like the big warm up, and you start feasting, and then Christmas is like definitely like the big family day, and a lot more, the gifts exchange and everything. And then you have a week later New Year's Eve partying, which is like kind of the boozy apex of the feasting season. Although by travel statistics, around Thanksgiving tends to be when you have most people traveling throughout the country to visit their family.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I
really like Thanksgiving. The meal I had was incredible. I went to some vegetarian place in New York and got a Thanksgiving meal, and it was absolutely incredible. And once I made a Thanksgiving meal as well. It took me 8 hours, but I thought it was during lockdown. So I thought I've got to have a warm up to see if I can do a Christmas dinner on my own. So I did a Thanksgiving dinner.
That makes sense.
The stuff that some of the Canadian recipes I was getting was stuff like candied yams with pecans, and like it was insane. It was delicious. It was amazing.
All the New World foods, yes, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an insane amount of food, and it's. It's too much. But I don't know. Depending upon, well, I grew up in the East Bay and in Berkeley, and so when I was young was when Alcatraz was taken over by the indigenous people, and you had that would start like the American Indian movement and stuff, and it was. So the occupation of Alcatraz, I think it was 1973. It lasted about a year or so and sparked off a lot of American Indian activism and backlash from the government. So they had a radio station there, Radio Free Alcatraz, a pirate radio station, and in KPFA and a lot of the other places, they always got their. On Alcatraz, they have a sunrise ceremony for the Indian peoples every Thanksgiving. And it's a really big deal, and they always broadcast it live, like on KPFA and some of the other local radio stations. So that's what I always think of when it comes to Thanksgiving. Although, there's just a ton of food. And getting into gender again, if you're a woman, is so much work. Because usually it's like the ladies that are like cooking. This last couple of Thanksgivings, my brother has done like all the cooking and stuff, and it's just so nice. And then afterwards, I can just I don't want to say clean up and stuff and zone out. But I really appreciate that because it just like I was saying with my friend Doreen, she and her sisters, there was like 4 sisters, and they would be, like the better part of a week. They'd be over there trying to do this stuff. They literally had like 2 ovens in the house they installed because they'd have these huge things. So it's just, I don't know, it could be very fun, like when you're a kid, but if you're in charge of doing it, it's just, it's just.
Yeah. And having to do it all again at Christmas as well, it just sounds like it
does get to be a bit much, but you do appreciate it, I think, when especially as your family members get older and,
Yeah, and then if you have like family recipes and stuff, then that's really cool, and it's a lot of fun. But
I'm halfway through making some Christmas puddings at the moment that are from a 100-year-old recipe that my grandma gave to me from this old cookery book. It's great, and it just takes a long time because you've got to sort of soak the fruit and then you've got to steam the puddings, and it takes ages. But they are, my grandma's Christmas puddings were the best that I'd ever had. So I have to sort of carry on the tradition a bit.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that makes it really meaningful.
Okay, so a story from the South. So I was born in Luton, which is Bedfordshire, which is quite near to London. And it seems to be a place pretty much devoid of really good ghost stories. There seems to be quite a lot of recorded supernatural happenings and superstition there. But there is everywhere in Britain. That makes no real difference. So instead, I found a story which seems to be a kind of delocalized story from surrounding counties in the south of England. The location seems to be pretty uncertain, and it's being attributed to stately homes kind of as far north as Rutland, which is the Midlands, and as far south as Cornwall, which is the far southwest. But the place that the legend is most often attributed to is Bramshill House in Hampshire, which is apparently haunted by at least 14 different ghosts anyway. And it's about 60 miles from the hospital that I was born in. So this is the story of the Mistletoe Bride. It's quite a famous one. I think it's been retold a lot. I kind of dug into it a bit to see how much of it was legend and how much of it was true. And it really is a great story, and it's a Christmassy one, I thought, to make up for it being not quite from the place where I was born. I've taken a lot of influence for the way that this story is being told from this brilliant website called Burials and Beyond. So we'll link to that in the show notes, but there's some really, really cool ghost stories on there for people who want to check that out, who haven't got enough from this episode already. Okay, so the story starts off in the 17th century. A young couple, Anne Cope and Lord Hugh Bethel, were to be married. Anne was the eldest daughter of John Cope of Bramshill House, so they were to be married in the stately home on Christmas Day. So after the vows and the celebrations, but before the couple were to retire to their marital bed, it was suggested by the bride that the groom and the guests should all play hide and seek. I don't. That's never happened to me at a wedding before. I've never had to suddenly play hide and seek. I think it would stress me out to have that sort of sprung on me in that way. But it could be fun, I guess. I don't encourage it. But and there was no electricity. There was no TV or radio or cheap wedding DJs in those times. So I guess the guests were up for it. They kind of jumped at the idea. So Anne asked for a 5-minute head start so she could be the first one to hide. After 5 minutes, the guests began their hunt, and they hunted and hunted and hunted, and concerns began to grow when no one could find her. It went on all day, and eventually the guests had to leave. They assured the worried groom that his bride had probably just fallen asleep in her hiding place. So her husband was distraught, and even more so when the bride couldn't be found. Rumours started to circulate that she'd run away from him, that she'd married him against her will, and that she'd left him jilted on their wedding day. Fragile male ego, I think that was his main concern in this. But to his credit, the legend goes that he was so distraught that he never stopped searching the house for his lost bride throughout the rest of his life. And 50 years later, whilst wandering through the empty mansion, he found a concealed door in the attic. And hidden behind oak panels was a large chest. And there, when he opened it, the heavy lid, inside the chest, was what was left of the body of Anne Cope, still in her wedding dress and still clutching a bouquet of mistletoe. The inside of the chest was covered in the frantic scratchings of the poor woman as she tried to escape her claustrophobic tomb. And ever since that day, the bride is said to walk the halls of the house. There are accounts of a sad-faced white lady passing through the fleur-de-lis room, so much so that people are often asked to move out of that room. And the ghost is said to still be wearing the wedding dress from that fated day, and to announce itself with Anne Cope's favourite scent, Lily of the Valley. And apparently the chest itself is also on display at the entrance to Bramshill House to this day. And another ghost, a man, much older than the spectre of the woman, is said to appear and to stand by, staring sadly at that old wooden chest. But unfortunately, like so many of the best stories and legends, it's probably more of an urban legend than it is an actual real-life ghost story. There's a few problems with this one, historically speaking. One is that this story actually seems to be a kind of retelling of a Central European story, which is an old Italian one, with a bride called Genova Orsini. And in some versions of the English story, actually, the chest is brought to Bramshill House already complete with the cadaver of Orsini resting in it. and the ghost kind of comes from that rather than from the bride dying herself. Second thing is that the chest at the house is definitely not the one that the bride died in, even if that part of the story is true. The one that the original death was supposed to have happened in was at the mansion, but it was moved out by the Cope family in the early 19th century, I guess because it was full of ghosts. And there's also sort of contention as to where this actually happened, because, as mentioned, there's at least 6 stately homes in England, in the south of England, who claim that story of their own, although Bramshill House is the most credible. And there is actually a wooden chest in the opening hall, which is supposed to be like a model of the original chest that the woman died in. But all that said, people really are seeing spirits of the White Lady walking through the house. There's some really, really well-documented accounts. In the 1930s, the young Joan Penelope Cope and her brother often used to wake up to find the White Lady standing by their bedside. There was a foreign diplomat who stayed there who actually asked to be moved out of the fleur-de-lis room because a white lady kept walking through it over and over again. And in the autumn of 1986, so a more recent one, a police officer from India who was undergoing training at the mansion was passing through a large chapel when he started to smell something odd, and it was the fragrance of the lily of the valley. And when he stepped out of the area, the fragrance disappeared. And when he entered the same area, it came back again. So he walked around the room to see if he could smell where the scent was coming from in other parts of the room. It was just centered around these 2 cushioned chairs. So he was so amazed that this scent was only in that one part of the room that when he questioned his chief superintendent, he told him the story of the White Lady. And as he listened, he realised that was it. It was the smell was the ghost. The ghost was the smell. It's so famous, this story, that it was actually, I think it was retold in a Hitchcock movie. I think it's in Rope. They tell us a very similar version of the story. It's also been immortalised in poems by Samuel Rogers and Thomas Bailey, be published as a short story in a collection by the author Kate Moss, and the poems put to music by bands such as Bellowhead and told as folk songs. So that's my Christmas ghost story.
I bet that chest stinks.
Yeah, yeah. You'd think that they'd be able to smell that. They'd
like
smell the bride after a while.
Body in it. Like I don't think it would be Lily of the Valley that you'd smell. It would be like.
Well, she's like a saint. She's like an incorruptible.
Flesh.
Yeah,
right.
That could be
they end up having the sweet, sweet, pleasing scents instead of.
Yeah.
And that's because, of course, this happened before the marriage was consummated. So
Exactly.
she was still pure.
So she was pure.
Pure, exactly, yeah.
I just
It does
pictured,
feel a bit like that there's some of what you were saying before, Steph, in this story. Some sort of allegory, perhaps about young women being married to people they don't want to be and that sort
being
of thing. Trapped, exactly.
In horrible situations.
Unable to escape, yeah.
Yeah. Ugh. And especially, it's one of those things where, people like to, at the time, glamorize these young noblewomen, but that, you really didn't have a lot to say in who you got married to. And your physical person. I mean, look at Princess Diana. When she got married to Charles, she had to go and get like a pelvic examination to make sure that she was a virgin. And This is like blasted all. This is like in the 1980s when they got married, and blasted all over, international media. She's like, what? It's like you're even the most personal facts of your body are not your own.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I knew the royal family was like weird and dated, but I didn't know that happened.
That was super because. She and I were about the same age. And yeah, I mean, I was like, geez, man, forget that. Well, this is like one of my crazy conspiracy or alternative history theories. But one of my theories about why Queen Elizabeth I never got married, in addition to not wanting to give up her power, is because it would have had to be publicly consummated, right? Everyone comes in there with you and makes sure that you do the deed. I'm just like, no, thank you. That's back when you had like nuns who, when they, they get their nunneries who get invaded or overrun by knights, they'd be like cutting off their noses. It's like, no, thank you. I'm going to make myself unappealing. It was a rough time. Well, there's parts of the world where it's rough like that nowadays. So it's an ongoing theme, sadly.
What's interesting about that one is similar to AP's story. I'm pretty confident that the story itself isn't true, but the hauntings do seem to be true, So whatever was there, either they've found a ghost and worked backwards, like it seemed might be the case with AP's story, or like what we were saying about Santa, so many people believe the story that some sort of disturbance is created.
Like an egregore kind of thing.
Yeah.
I found that's what I found kind of interesting in my story was the connection with the well, being near the anniversary of her husband's death, and it's like that's what prompted her to go to Henniker. So is that kind of like an imprint, of a moment in time? So like maybe that was Mary that you see, and she's only briefly stopping at this house. Maybe throwing something in the well was symbolic, as a way of letting go of her husband who had just passed or something like that. She would do it on the anniversary or something like that. So, I mean, the fact that the fact that the facts don't add up when you tell these stories doesn't necessarily mean that that there's no truth to it at all, right? So, I mean, people do experience these paranormal things, and it also doesn't necessarily mean it's all projections from the mind or psychological. So, I mean, I think there's always some combination going on, and picking out what that is really interesting. And, like the phantom smell, or everybody's going to have a different association there. And whether it's attached to the actual chest itself, or whether having a replica of the chest is going to have the same effect that the original would have. Because symbolically, it's the same thing, and it's serving that purpose. It's there on display as that. So even though it's not the chest, they just got one that smelled less funky, and they put it there.
So, something that perhaps doesn't have the stench of death literally emanating from it.
I'm just picturing that somebody dragging this old chest out to the side of the street with a sign that says "free."
Free chest,
somebody else's problem now.
I mean, it does make you wonder, like you were saying, AP, how much mindset plays a part in this, because there's two sort of ideas that I have in my mind at any given time, and one is that if you can get yourself into the right mindset, then it's like being able to see through the veil. You get yourself into that, and that's kind of like what ritual does. But then also more like when we were talking to Joe Hickey Hall, you were saying about how I think there's probably some interplay between your mind. So it's not just as if you're tuning in like a radio to be able to pick up the frequencies of the weird stuff that's going on. But the very fact that you're doing that may in some way not necessarily cause a thing, but interact in some way that is part of a natural process which kicks off the whole thing or becomes part of the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, like the narrative, the story itself is certainly part of it, and the historical details are a different part, and then interacting with it ultimately is what's going to make the magic happen. I mean, what I think is interesting is the people that ostensibly have no connection to the story, like the guy from India training to be a police officer. He has no connection with this place or the story, and he finds out about it later. So.
And he's not even got, I'm assuming, sort of the same cultural, if he's come from India, he's not going to have the same set of like symbols in the ghost stories that we normally have in England or whatever in the Western world.
Probably wouldn't know what Lily of the Valley is.
Yeah, stuff like that. Kind of like, I imagine, this is just a wild guess, but I imagine that ghost stories in India take quite a different form in the same way that ghost stories from other continents or cultures that are different to ours might, and sort of, so it's quite interesting that that's still kind of happened in the same way. But going back to what AP was saying, I think like when it comes to a story like this, and the historical facts and details are actually kind of almost the least important part, because you can change them and you can and it still has the same effect almost.
Right.
It's like you can chop and change with what they are. That's not where the power lies, because that's not the sort of channel it's going down. It's like almost it's working on like a different part of your brain, the story, or it's not working on the part of your brain that is logical facts. If you think about when you listen to a ghost story, you're kind of it's almost like watching a horror film. You kind of to get the best out of it, you kind of almost want to suspend your disbelief and take it in as you would, as a child would, perhaps. Once you start like trying to pick it apart and say, well, this film, this actor's not very good, or this, that's unrealistic, that wouldn't have happened. Then you just stop enjoying the film, and it loses its power over you. And it's kind of the same with a ghost story. If you're like, well, hang on a minute, why didn't it? Then it kind of ruins it, and you've almost got to, for it to have its full effect, you've kind of almost just got to forget all that stuff and just.
I think suspension of disbelief is a good way to put it, because I think that's really important when you're engaging in any of this stuff, your magic rituals, or looking for UFOs, or doing a spirit box, or anything like that. Because suspension of disbelief is a willful act, isn't it? You are allowing yourself to put your disbelief to one side. It's not like you've lost your faculties or gone insane or something. You're willingly allowing yourself to participate in the thing that you're doing, with that element of skepticism dampened down. And I think that's a really valuable mindset to take some of this in, because if you're constantly disbelieving, then even if something amazing happens to you, you're going to find reasons why it didn't. Okay, so we'll finish with the West.
The West.
The good witch of the West over here, Steph Quick.
Going out west.
Yeah. Take it away, Steph.
Well, I chose this ghost story mostly because I'm interested in the woman who is a ghost now, Mary Ellen Pleasant. I only learned about her a few years ago when I moved to Napa and found out there was this woman buried in a cemetery here in town called Mary Ellen Pleasant. And she has a very plain grave marker. It's a National Historic registry on the Registry of the National Historic Places, because she was the mother of civil rights in California. And as she wanted to put on her grave marker, a friend of John Brown, the abolitionist who led the raid on Harper's Ferry, which helped spark the American Civil War, which ended up in freeing the slaves. And I find myself in a kind of a predicament because there is a huge amount of historical material which proves that Mary Ellen Pleasant did exist. She was born either in 1812, 1814, maybe 1817 in Georgia or in Virginia. She was probably biracial, multiracial, but she could pass as white. Her father was a Cherokee Indian or possibly a plantation owner or slaver who was white. Her mother, probably black. Some people say that her mother and her grandmother were both priestesses of Haitian voodoo and taught her this religion. Other people say other things happened. At a certain point, she ended up becoming an indentured servant to Quakers up in the northeast part of the country. The man, it was a couple who ran a store and had purchased her as an indentured servant, and the husband was a whaler. They taught her to read and write, and she learned quite a bit about business there. She met a man, John Smith, I think was his name, and became Mary Ellen Smith, and began working with her husband on the Underground Railroad. And so what they would do is, this was a whole system that was set up prior to the Civil War. So you could facilitate people who were enslaved, facilitate either buying them out of slavery or getting them mostly up into free states and then hopefully up into Canada. So her first husband died, which is kind of sad, but kind of not, because he was abusive. And then he left her about $45,000. And she dedicated that money to her work as an abolitionist and helping to fund the Underground Railroad and other activities. And a lot of this is documented. You can see her in census filings. Later on, she became an incredible businesswoman. By the time that, at the height of her powers and financial holdings, she had moved to San Francisco, had a 30-room mansion which took up 2 city blocks, and she had amassed about $1 billion in today's money as a black woman at that time. When her husband died, she continued with the abolitionist activism and working on the Underground Railroad. But then there was increasing tensions in the United States between the free and the slave states before the Civil War. Amazingly, the slave states started to say, "Hey, this is our property. Just because it gets over to one of your states, you should hunt it down and ship it back to us." And the free states were like, "But these are human beings, and we don't have slavery here, so it's not our problem." So there was a lot of tension, and they started passing fugitive slave acts, which meant that it's kind of like here, the tension in California these days with ICE, the Immigration Control Service, where we have a lot of, California used to be Mexico. There's a lot of people from Latin America that come up here, always have, since time immemorial. And move back and forth. They do a ton of the work here in our communities, and the federal government gets, depending upon who's in office, they'll get really uptight about wanting to, anytime you see anyone who looks like they might be here illegally, you need to turn them over to the feds. And California, for many years now, has said, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to cooperate with you. So it's kind of a similar tension that was back then. Anyway, she ended up marrying another guy who I guess was a pretty good cook. He worked... he would go out, this is when she was still in the Northeast, he would go out on ships and work as like a sea cook on the high seas. And then, so she'd be at home and working in a tailor shop, learning to cook, working on the Underground Railroad. But then things started to get a little bit too hot for her. So she came to California shortly after the gold rush began and settled in San Francisco. And since she was coming over to San Francisco, they're the West, right? Go West, young man, because you can recreate yourself. So Mary Ellen Smith became, in a way, left the ghost of being a black woman and an indentured servant behind, and became Mary Ellen Smith, the white lady who was a good cook, and started running boarding houses and restaurants and laundries and doing it because San Francisco was experiencing this huge boom due to the gold rush. But there were a lot of people who ended up making fortunes off providing banking services. Levi's, right? he was a provider of provisions to the miners, people providing all these kind of support services. So she started cultivating wealthier white men who needed like domestic services, like they wanted good food, they needed laundry, they needed a nice place to stay, they need someone to help them run their households and stuff. And she started listening in. She would gather intelligence, right? So you'd be eavesdropping on these guys while they're sitting there talking about how they're going to start the Bank of California, right? And she had money from her first husband, and so she would invest it according to this intelligence. And then as she started to prosper more, she would hire black people and slaves who had escaped to California, black people who had made their way here because California was a free state. And so she started helping to build black communities. So to the white society, right, she was a white lady because she could pass. But to black society, she was known as the Black City Hall because she was like really plugged into everyone and she could make things happen for you. She could set you up with a job and help you find a place in society, find work, and then you could help her out, right? If you had interesting information for her that she could use to her advantage, and help build this kind of power base underneath the city. And she made a lot of money. What did she use that money for? Well, she was one of the big funders of the raid on Harper's Ferry. She was helped to fund John Brown's activities in trying to foment a slave rebellion against the United States. He was, when he was hanged, or actually when he was captured, he was found to have a note in his pocket that said, I think it was that the axe has been laid at the base of the tree. When it falls, there'll be more money to follow, signed WEP. But she just had terrible handwriting. It was actually MEP, Mary Ellen Pleasant. Now this gets into, because you guys are liking to talk about ghosts, how much is folklore, how much is story, how much can be proven. There are people to this day that say, well, she just said that note was from her, but you can't prove it. You can't prove that she was actually blah, blah. And it's like, well, I wonder why that would be. What happened to John Brown when they could prove that he was during the raid on the Harper's Ferry, man? He was hanged within a couple months. So yeah, if you're basically fomenting treason against the government, people will be motivated to not keep a lot of written records. However, after the Civil War, when they passed the 13th and 14th Amendment, so she was a citizen, she came out basically as black and shook up a lot of her social standing in San Francisco. She put down in the census that she was a black person. And then she started to pursue civil cases. And this is another instance. I mean, we have records of all her business dealings. We have pictures of her mansion. We have a ton of her correspondence. And we have records of these civil cases that she was involved in. She and two other black ladies were trying to get on a streetcar in San Francisco to take public transportation. So it was her, Charlotte Brown, and Emma Turner. This was in 1866, so just shortly after the Civil War. And the streetcar operator said, no, we don't take colored people on this streetcar. So she and these other two women took this case to court. And because she had a ton of money, right, she's able to keep this court case going. And it went through the courts for about 30 years before the California said, okay, yeah, with these public transportation, you can't discriminate. So this was like in the 1890s. So it was well before we had the civil rights movement in the South with Rosa Parks, the ACLU or the NAACP gaining these type of rights for black people and citizens across the United States. So she was well ahead of her time. She also challenged the fugitive slave laws in California. There was a guy named Archie Lee who was enslaved, and the slaver of him brought him from Mississippi, I think, to California. This was before the Civil War was fought. And Archie Lee was a nice, sensible young person, and so he kept escaping. And this slaver kept trying to get him back. And so a number of people helped finance the legal challenges so that Archie Lee could be recognized as like a citizen and a free person. Of course, this took a long time. And eventually, I love it because I think the guy's name was Stovall. He was arrested for kidnapping on the last time when he tried to get him back. It's like, this is a human being. You can't do that. So she did a lot of that stuff. And there's an instance where we see a paper trail, a true record, history that historians can agree upon that this person existed, and she took these actions in service of abolition of slavery and then civil rights. She also pursued famous court cases that helped put into legislation that Black people could give evidence in trials, which had not been the case before. So she was very forward-thinking. Meanwhile, she's running all these businesses and making all these investments and just getting a massive fork ton of cash. And she was doing a lot of community building among Black people in California and the Bay Area. She is setting up and funding Black presses, encouraging the African Methodist Episcopalian churches, supporting them as a community center. She was known as the Black City Hall, right? You go there to get something done in the Black community. At the same time, right, she had all these activities that she was keeping hidden because they were subversive. And she also told a lot of tales about herself, or let other people tell them, and didn't disagree with them. There is a lot of controversy about whether or not she actually studied with Marie Laveau, the Voodoo Queen. If people are interested in her history, one of the foremost historians of Mary Ellen Pleasant is Dr. Shasheen Bibbs. We can link her in the show notes, but she's done a lot of looking at her actual history, and she has, I believe, substantiated links between Mary Ellen Pleasant and Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau had a very particular strategy for Black people furthering their cause in white society, and Mary Ellen Pleasant took a lot of cues and seemed to have gone along with the same playbook. Getting good with white people, powerful white people, get them to trust you, get what information you can from them, use it against them, basically. It's the Haitian model. As there started to be, towards the end of Mary Ellen Pleasant's life, she died in 1904, so in the 1890s, the tides started to kind of turn against her because there was more racial tensions, there was a lot more economic depression, so times were harder, so people were taking it out against Black people. And there started to be a lot more rumors and stuff about her as being a voodoo queen, running orgies, blackmailing guys through running brothels and a lot of this stuff. She was involved in one court case where she was attesting. A protege of hers was a young woman who had married a rich white guy. He was a senator. So the senator was trying to say, look, I never married this woman. She's full of it. So Mary Ellen Pleasant came in to testify that actually, yes, she had seen the marriage contract, and everyone was accusing her of being a voodoo queen. So she brought like a small voodoo doll into court, and she's like, "Yeah, sure, go with it." The senator doesn't, get straight with the truth here. He's gonna feel it. And within a number of days, the senator had died. So of course, this contributed to her legacy. Now, did she ever actually have anything to do with this? Probably not. But you still, to this day, I was listening to a podcast, which is a network of podcasts that are terrible and will not be named, but this man was all in with, she was a criminal. She caused the... So anyway, she ended up losing her fortune the last few years of her life. She was cared for by many people that she had helped support in the community, and she died. She was 89. And it was only towards the very end of her life that a lot of her story came out, like how much she had supported John Brown and other things. A friend of hers named Olive Sherman had lived here in Napa, and had a family plot. And so that, when Mary Ellen Pleasant died, she was buried here in Napa because she didn't have any money. She'd been kind of swindled out of her fortune. On the grounds of her mansion, she had planted 6 eucalyptus trees. And now that is, her mansion had burned down, but now that's like the smallest park in San Francisco, is the Mary Ellen Pleasant Park, with these huge mature eucalyptus trees and a plaque to her as the mother of civil rights in California. And it has the classic ghost stuff, like, oh, you see her figure moving through the trees. Oh, if you say things that are not so nice about her, the eucalyptus trees will drop their nuts on you. If you make a wish, you might grant it if, you're pure of heart, type of thing. So in a way, it's become kind of like a feel-good, I always think, a Chamber of Commerce ghost. It's like spooky. It's like this inspirational figure. There have been a number of actual, reports of people experiencing phenomena at that location. But then also, there's one element of that is kind of like not so feel good, because it gets more kind of at the nitty gritty of what she was about, which is that dogs get scared there. Why would dogs be scared? Well, this is a callback to the Underground Railroad, when they would use dogs to hunt slaves who were trying to escape. So it kind of hints at that there. And that's kind of like the classic, the ghost. It's like the past trying to come back. We have this history, some of it, maybe embellished, some of it, whatever, known historical figure with fascinating history. If you go to her grave here in Napa, it's a different story. Because first of all, it's like very much mother of civil rights, friend of John Brown. It's none of this kind of, it's, nice trees or anything. It's like, okay, this is a lady whose life was about one thing. And that's what she spent her life doing. And to this day, if you go there, it's behind the oil, tune, and lube place where we take our cars. So after we get the oil changed, we'll go over to Tule Cemetery and sit by her grave, and it's always being worked. And luckily with Tule Cemetery, they are super cool with anyone doing whatever there. And there's flowers, there's offerings, there's candles, there's booths, there's little skulls. People draw Vayse, Haitian voodoo symbols, on her grave, and the cemetery leaves it there. There's a beautiful African sculpture that was put there, I believe, in the early 1970s. There's various African American historical associations and regular historical associations, other historical, like a civic historical associations. There's a beautiful African style sculpture there, and a plaque from the National Registry of Historic Places talking about a little bit of her history. But it's constantly being worked. So I went there one time and someone had put like 20 different candles that they'd burned down all around her grave plaque. And there it's very different, because it's like the details don't matter. What matters is there's still work to do, and we need you to show us the future because of what you did in the past, right? It's very Dickensian. Also, that's a weird synchronicity too. I didn't know that Dickens' A Christmas Carol was published on December 19th. That's the day that I have my near-death experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's also my grandparents' wedding anniversary and my father-in-law's birthday. So it's like a big day for me. Yeah. But it's very much there. It's like, okay, what is the present? What are we doing in the present that looks to the past and is helping us to create the future? And I understand people wanting to know what really happened in the past and wanting to hold on to what happened that we can find out, that we can document. But I will submit. My thesis statement is that these ghost stories have more to do about, let's look to the past to see how it was and what it tells us about what we need to do now to get to the future that we want to have.
100%.
Yeah. No.
And I love the that we led into this with the scent of lilies of the valleys because, well, my birthday is in May, and the birth flower of May is lily of the valleys, and I was born on John Brown's birthday.
Wow.
So we have a nice floral tie-in there with the whole Mary Ellen Pleasant story. If people want to go down that rabbit hole, it's incredible. She's a fascinating woman, multi-talented, just incredible businesswoman. Really knew how to take advantage of whatever opportunities that presented themselves, and how to keep her mouth shut. But
and when you say that people leave like offerings to her on the grave and stuff, is it like deification in any way? I mean, I don't know anything about voodoo or Haitian traditions, but do they do they have saints or that sort of thing? Is that kind of her role?
There's a lot. I know some about Haitian voodoo. I don't know a lot about it, but there is very much a sense that you can keep alive knowledge or qualities or connections that dead people have alive through interacting with that aspect of them. If someone has talent with healing or herbs, right? And that person has died, you can it's kind of like a necromancy almost, I think, of feeding them into these larger archetypes or like Loa of kind of incorporating these individuals into these larger, like more archetypal. So it would be kind of like a saint or a Loa.
It's fascinating.
And then
in
you're
some
able
of the
to
traditions, the Loa have like corollary saints.
Yes, yeah,
They
there's a lot
them
of
to be like an emanation of sort of, or one's an emanation of the other. So they have like a candle to a saint, like a Loa of those hurricane candles, but that's actually supposed to be for the Loa that's proportionate to.
And a lot of these offerings can just be candles, and then there's a large Catholic Hispanic population. So there's a lot of that symbolism all through the cemetery and the valley of Napa Valley. So a lot of these things are, I think some of them are just kind of like folk magic, or it's a lot more kind of free form. It's a lot more, she was someone who was able to make things happen, not necessarily go through the accepted channels. It's like, we're going to make this happen however we can make it happen because it needs to happen. Right?
That's useful. That's useful skill to have, and a useful skill to be able to tap into, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and I like it too because she's known for the eucalyptus nuts falling and from her eucalyptus trees, and she's under oak trees in Napa. So there's always a bunch of acorns all over the place. It's a very beautiful spot, and people just go there and leave whatever offerings and do whatever it is that they're doing. There's a number of graves like that here in the Napa Valley, and so it's interesting to see.
Amazing. Were you born around the Napa Valley, or were you born in California? Or
I was born in California, in Fresno, which is in the Great Central Valley, and my the whole issue of Mary Ellen Pleasant passing is interesting and more personal to me because my mom's family, her grandmother and all her grandmother's siblings were born on a rancheria in the central part of California. My sister has found out which one it was. I'm not sure which one it is, but because they were of Chukchansi descent, which is a Yokut tribe, which is from the Coarse Gold Creeks in California. It's kind of like just west, the foothills west of Yosemite, that area. God's country, a beautiful part of the world. But So they were all actually, they were born on the rancheria. That's like being born on an Indian reservation. That's what they call them here in California. But they get all passed as white. So they did, because they were born like in the 20s and 30s, and there was a lot of discrimination against Indian peoples here in California. It was pretty sanctioned up through the 1950s. They would have, like in Fresno, in the 50s, you'd have the regular seating in the theaters, like a movie theater, and then the balcony would be where the Indians were. So they still had segregation for that group of people. Actually, the last people in the United States to be emancipated were Californian Indians. It was, I believe, in the late 1870s. But yeah, they were, when California came into the United States, it was basically a free-for-all. If you were a white person and you saw indigenous person, you could just grab them up and they'd be your slave. Yeah, and they were the last to be emancipated. So there's a lot of different people that have come to California. There's a lot of mixing of various cultures, which is one of the reasons why I love it here so much. But yeah, there's a lot of fucked up shit too, basically. And that you gotta, if you're not working against it, then I think you gotta just keep working against it, because otherwise, it's gonna not change. So, but
thank you very much. That was fantastic.
That was great.
So before we wrap up, AP Strange, what weather do you normally get at Christmas on the West Coast where you live?
On the East Coast.
The East Coast, sorry, you're the East.
Most of my life, the weather patterns in New England have been completely unpredictable, and it's been worse in the last couple of years. So classically, I could always count on winter involving snow. When I was a kid, there would be like several feet of snow, often in the wintertime, that would just last all winter. And in recent years, it's really sucked because we've barely gotten any snow, and it's barely even gotten cold in the winter. So it's been a bit unnerving, because it's like a very obvious slap in the face from the climate saying, this isn't normal. But in general, as far as weather goes, it can get damn cold here, but not quite as cold as some other places in the country. It's not like Alaska cold, but we get the full range of weather and temperature here, where summers can be up in the hundreds Fahrenheit. I've seen about 112 here, wow. And I've seen -40. So we get a pretty broad range when you're looking at the whole year.
Steph, what kind of weather do you get? Is it sunny on the West Coast?
Yeah, well, California is a really big state. Like if you're going to go from one end to the other, like north to south, and you really floor it and take speed or something. It's going to be like, I don't know, like 11, 12 hours. And it also is, a few hundred, I think it's like 350, 400 miles east-west. So we get everything from big old fogged in storm surges to sometimes it's sunny and clear and kind of crisp. Every once in a while you'll get some snow here in the Napa Valley, but usually a little farther along into the winter. It really depends on where you are in the state. Here, usually it's going to be maybe like a 40s, 50s, sunny, clear. It could be just about anything though. The worst part that we get here, as far as if you want to talk about creepy and ghostly and stuff, I think you guys get this in England a lot too. But you get that radiation fog, tule fog that comes up from the ground.
Yeah.
And it's just like you'll be driving. Well, you get it a lot in the Central Valley, and so we used to go down to visit our grandparents, and it would scare the shit out of us because you'd be driving along, and then all of a sudden it's just like this fog socked in, and you can't see. I mean, literally, sometimes you can't see 10 feet in front of you, and you're driving along. And I remember we beat little kids, and they call it the fog line, which is a big white line that they put along the right side of the road so you can follow it along with. And, we'd be creeping along, and my mom would have her door open looking out to see the fog line so we wouldn't drive off the road into the open canals that they had because it's a big agricultural area. So we'd be like, trying not to scream and petrified in the back of the car. Parents like, be quiet, we're driving. It's like this super stressful situation. So sometimes you have those tule fogs. That'd be like your scariest Christmas situation.
Yeah, stay indoors for that.
Oh my gosh.
But the weather that I associate most up here in the north of England with Christmas is sort of just cold rain, really. Like that seems to be what it is every year.
We used to get snow a bit when we were younger, didn't we?
Yeah. I mean, I remember the last time it really snowed was about 2004, I think. We got really snowy. Oh, no, it was 2009. There was snow like 3 days before Christmas, I think, quite a heavy snow.
Yeah, I can't remember individual years. I know, like, when the year I was born, 81, there was, like, really, really crazy thick snow, like feet and feet of snow, like, but you just don't get that anymore. It's just mainly rain where we are, I think. It's just...
Yeah. Because you see the romanticized Christmas cards with people sort of ice skating on lakes and stuff.
Yeah.
And apparently in the Victorian times, that was much more what it was like. But I think climate change really has.
Good old industrial revolution, eh?
Yeah.
Well, wasn't that the very tail end of like a mini ice age too?
Yeah.
Probably,
like tapering off from the I think all through the 1700s, but that kind of took a long time to wind down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't really associate sort of Christmas with snow or ice or anything anymore. It's just
well, I know there were like a couple of years in a row that like the Thames River in London was just frozen. I don't know if that's the 1700s, the late 1700s, I think. I'm not sure, but
there's nothing like that now.
Yeah, it's quite
I
hard
remember reading about it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's like, as Prince said, sometimes it snows in April.
Great. So before we go, recommendations. I thought we should recommend something for Christmas. It can be absolutely anything, because we talked a bit when we were preparing this episode, and I suggested books or movies or anything, but we could also do foods, drinks, anything that makes Christmas. Do you want to start, Steph?
Well, I was trying to think, because thinking is a problem for me. But I was letting you guys know that for me, I don't know, Christmas is I always like all the food and drinks. So I'd say have some nice champagne. If you want to find some from Sonoma County, Mary Ellen Pleasant had a ranch, including a vineyard called Beltane. Again, going to May. Up there in Glen Ellen in the Sonoma County, which is actually near where Jack London had a place too. Wolf Hall, actually, it burned down. But get some champagne, maybe have a mocha. Our family, my mom always likes to make a brioche, a lot of eggy with cardamom. And then have that for Christmas morning and with a lot of butter and hot chocolate. Nice. So you can have that.
Excellent recommendation. AP, what would you recommend for Christmas?
I would recommend spamming Stephen James Buckley with birthday greetings. Spending part of your Christmas doing that.
That's a new Christmas tradition.
Yeah.
I Buckley, what do you have?
I'm looking it up. There was so what I'd recommend you try to find, if you can. There was in 1986, a children's TV special that was aired in the UK. I assume it was the UK. I'm just looking it up now. Anyway, it was called The Christmas Toy. And then a TV show was made afterwards called The Secret Life of Toys. But The Christmas Toy, it looks like it was aired in the BBC. And if you watch that, you'll see where they got the plot for Toy Story from, because it's just exactly the same as Toy Story. It was like, when I watched Toy Story, I was like, this is exactly the same as that thing I used to watch when I was a kid, where there was a toys coming to life when the kid was not in the room and stuff. So yeah, watch that maybe.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say the version of the Snowman that we have this cartoon. I don't know if it gets played in the US, where the Snowman's
I recommend
Raymond
people
Briggs.
not to watch the Snowman.
Yeah, but there was one version of the Snowman where Bowie did the introduction to it.
Yeah. He's there with like a nice Christmas jumper on, and he's reading it. Yeah.
And it turns out that he was the kid because he gets the scarf out. Yeah. So we got to get Bowie in there. I thought the Christmas movie that I'd recommend that I always watch, or I try to watch every year, apart from the Muppets Christmas Carol, which we covered.
That's a given.
Christmas. Yeah, that's a given. Is Scrooged.
Yeah, I was going to say that one. Scrooged is great.
I absolutely love Scrooged.
It's proper creepy. It's like because I remember with Scrooged, I was talking about this in one of the Zoom Skype chat things that we have. With Scrooged, sorry, I'm hijacking your thing here, but
No, go ahead.
I've started. So when the first time I heard/saw Tom Waits, I thought, who does he remind me of? And it was the cab driver in Scrooged.
Who's the singer from the
New York Dolls.
New York Dolls.
Yeah.
Yeah, he turns up in that movie that I'm obsessed with, the documentary Searching for the Wrong Guy, Jesus, and plays like a really, really moving version of a Geeshie Wiley song. If you can, it's on Spotify, but it's just absolutely phenomenal. And like that was the moment, because I'd never made the connection between the cab driver from Scrooged and the New York Dolls. And then I saw him in that documentary. Realized he was a singer from the New York Dolls. I was like, he just looks just exactly like the cab driver.
Well, he also recorded under the name Buster Poindexter, so he had several names going on. But his real name was David Johansen.
David Johansen.
Yeah. Amazing.
That movie's great, though. It has Bobcat Goldthwait has a really memorable role in it as the guy that gets fired. I like the fact that in the TV special they have Buddy Hackett playing himself as Santa Claus. I think was it Buddy Hackett? It was a wild, old time comedian cameo. It's
a really it's one of those movies that, even though it's very kind of 80s looking, it really in some ways hasn't aged. Like when they do that Christmas special when it's the action Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And you see so many movies like that on Netflix now that just look exactly like that.
Speaking of Netflix, and you mentioned Snowmen earlier, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Hot Frosty. Have you guys heard of this?
Hot Frosty. I'm not sure I want to.
It's like it's a somewhat risque love story about Frosty the Snowman.
Okay.
In the style of Hallmark Christmas movies. It's on Netflix.
Do they use a carrot?
No, I don't think so. But I haven't watched it. But I'm going to recommend that other people do, and then tell me what it was like. I've been trying to get Steph to watch it, and she won't.
Yeah, so far I've managed to avoid it. I was like, well, it's not really a Christmas thing. I don't know. It kind of is, because it ends up being kind of wholesome. But it's and I don't know if it's for everyone. But it's an old This American Life. It's from 2011 or 2007 or something, but it's from an episode called The Super, and it's this one guy is living in an apartment in LA, and his super is an older guy who develops cancer and is undergoing chemotherapy. So I end up having talking more, and the super tells him about meeting this a classy, elegant older lady who strikes up a conversation with him at the gas station. And she says, "So are you bald from the chemo or just because it's sexy?" And she ends up telling him about this great investment opportunity because they have discovered a snowman who can bench press 400 pounds, and they want to take him on a tour through Southeast Asia. And so if anyone's interested in a kind of seasonal snowman-centric piece of audio,
sounds amazing.
We'll link to that in the show notes.
Sounds like there's a lot going on there.
There ends up being so many questions, and and if someone feels like listening to an absurd yet heartwarming, kind of Christmassy story, I would recommend that one.
Incredible. So, AP Strange, where can people find you online if they haven't done so already?
Well, you can find me at apstrange.com, which is where all my writings are. On the sidebar of my blog site, there is a little widget that will allow you to listen to my podcast, but you can also find my podcast on any of the things that podcasts are generally on, including YouTube. The podcast is The AP Strange Show. So far, it seems like every other one has been about a movie. So I do like one show that's about whatever the crazy thing I want to talk to a guest about. And then the next episode will be about the third movie in a franchise called Third Time's a Charm. And I even had one recently with someone called Peter C. Hine on it as a guest.
That was so cringy. Worst podcast I've ever heard in my life.
And then I have a series of videos on the same YouTube channel. You can find the podcast where I just kind of show weird books from my library, and those are fun to do. So
amazing.
Yeah, those are
Steph,
fun.
where can listeners find your appearances or you have a YouTube channel, do you as well?
Yeah, I have. Well, probably the easiest thing to do is I have a WordPress blog. Ghost Dog is a mystery box. It's stephaniequick.home.blog, I think. And then I have a page there where, I'm on Twitter. I have a YouTube channel. I have a bunch of my podcasts and video appearances on there. I have a bunch of written material. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Blue Sky. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, people can check it out.
And if anyone wants to find any more Vayse, if you enjoy what you've heard today, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram, and that's at Vayse, then Vayse spelled backwards. So that's at VAYSEESYAV. Our website is www.vayse.co.uk. You can get the podcast on all the major podcasting platforms, but it's only at the website that you'll find the full show notes, which sounds like there's going to be some good stuff in the show notes for this episode. So go to our website. You can email us with any thoughts or ideas at vayseinfo@gmail.com. We try and read, we do read everything. We try and reply to everything as quickly as we possibly can that comes to that. Bandcamp has the soundtrack, the first 2 volumes of the soundtrack. I think the third one is on the way. You can get a link to that from our website. We have a Ko-Fi if anyone wants to support the podcast. But also, if you do a monthly subscription to the Ko-Fi, you get access to our Discord. I'm really loving the Discord at the moment. You'll see AP Strange and Steph Quicker are there often, and there's loads of people, really interesting people on there that I love talking to every day. And finally, just thank you to AP Strange and Steph Quick for joining us, and thank you for coming on again and preparing such interesting stories. I really, really appreciate it. And happy Christmas to you both, and happy Christmas to everyone that's listening.
Happy Christmas.
Basically, happy Christmas to everyone except me, is what you said.
Happy birthday to you.
Literally, is that your admission that you've not been listening?
Well, no, but I'm not listening. I'm not a listener. I'm a partaker. I'm a contributor.
Yeah, so everybody send birthday greetings to Buckley.
Yeah.
You get birthday greetings.
So before you all go, I know that Christmas is a time for giving and a time for thinking of others and a time for, kindness and all that crap. The question I'm going to ask you all is, What do you all want for Christmas? What are you hoping to get for Christmas? What's in it for you? So start with you, Steph. Go on. What are you hoping to receive this year?
Oh,
Think of me as a shopping mall Santa, and you're a child, and I'm fat and in a red suit with a beard and saying
just
ho,
how
ho,
I
ho.
described you in the intro.
Exactly. What?
It's all coming full circle.
Yeah, exactly.
It always does.
What would
what I
you
would like
for
is
Christmas, Steph?
a night away in a little bed and breakfast, not too far from here, all by myself.
I'll see what I can do. What about you, AP?
I'd like a winning lottery ticket.
A winning lottery ticket. Okay, do it.
Yeah, a substantial win.
Substantial win. I was going to say, let's make it a bit more exact there, because you might just end up with $10 or whatever. Hine,
Right.
what would you like for Christmas?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I would have also liked the winning lottery ticket, but I don't want to steal from AP's fortune by splitting the win. So I think that I would like. I don't know. There's so much. It's just so much that I want. So many things.
So this is just a roundabout way for me to sort of work out what to get you for Christmas.
Yeah.
I'm not
All right, well, I'll
listening
change.
to what the other guys said.
I'll change mine to a book called Hands. What I think it's called. It's got a case study of a phenomenal hypnotic subject about a woman that was in telepathic contact with an alien that resembled a human hand that had hands at the ends of its hands.
Wow.
And came from a planet full of handstronauts that were like that. Because this book, there are like no copies of this book in the world that don't cost several $100s. So if you could get me that for Christmas, I'll be very happy.
I'll give it a try. Hine, have you had any thoughts yet? Now that you can just have the lottery ticket if you want, or because
the lottery ticket would be nice.
Yeah.
If
You could choose the lottery ticket or what's in the box.
Yeah.
The lady or the tiger. Oh my God, too much pressure.
what
I want for Christmas is of course world peace. That's got to be
world peace. I knew you'd say something sickening like that. It was never going to be, a lifetime supply of chocolate or,
Yeah. I mean, a lifetime supply of chocolate wouldn't do me any good.
No, it wouldn't. I was going to say
peanut butter though. If you want
peanut butter,
I'll
see what I can do. I'll just get you a massive vat of peanut butter.
Yeah, another one. to go with the one that's already in my kitchen.
The one? Why have you only got one? Have you not prepared?
This is why I need another one for Christmas.
Yeah. Right. Well, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Well, Stephen,
Merry
what do you
Christmas
want?
to all.
Yeah, you haven't told us what you want.
What I want is not repeatable on a podcast, on a family-friendly podcast like this.
Oh dear.
No, hang on. Let me think. I hadn't. The question never usually gets fired back to me. I'd like.
It's tough, isn't it?
It is tough. I was kind of hinting to my wife that I wanted this little flute that I found. I got advertised this little flute on Instagram. It looks really cool, but I think it might be really annoying as well. Just like it reminds me of learning to play this little pipe.
So you got to leave that to her discretion then. Like if she gets you that flute, she's implicitly also giving you the gift of the patience.
Yeah, I mean, it might come with a caveat. Sort of, you can have the flute, but only when I'm out. Sort of thing. God bless us, everyone. Yeah.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
A flute-free night.
That was really good because we didn't plan that.
No, we didn't. We haven't talked for a while, so I'm getting it all out of our system.
Yeah.
My dad learned to play trombone when we were in high school. It was exciting. I don't know why. There's something about this type of sounds coming out of a grown man, right?
I think like the trombone's got to be the most comical of instruments.
Yeah, it's got a sort of implied clumsy,
Yeah, like you've got like the penny whistle that's got like that's for the pants falling.
Yeah.
But like the trombone's like the grown-up version of that.
Yeah.
It's terrible because I grew up playing tuba. Yep. And so I was always sat next to the trombonist, and I have to say some of the sweetest, like most intelligent, most sensitive musicians, and some of the hottest guys I knew were trombonists. I could never figure it out, but that's as it stands. But Dad, yeah.
I think his confidence.
Stephanie's always all about the tromboners. I should have known this for some time.
His confidence is it takes a lot of confidence confidence is attractive. It takes a lot of confidence to just say, right, do you know what, I'm just gonna play the trombone. I'm not, fuck it, I'm gonna go with the trombone. Like all the other, lads in high school playing the guitar or whatever to try and impress girls, but like really, it's the trombone guys who've got all the confidence.
It's one instrument that never really makes the mainstream rock music, isn't it? Trombone.
True.
You've got a lot of trumpet players, you've got a lot of saxophone players. I'm sure a few ska bands.
That's the thing, yeah. Well, we were in the Bay Area too, so you have like Tower of Power and all those big brass, heavy funk bands and stuff.
You'll never get like a morphine, but instead of a saxophone, a trombone.
Maybe that's what you want for Christmas. Maybe what you want for Christmas is there to be
all
someone
for Christmas is
a rock band with a trombone. I mean, visually it would look fantastic because you've got the sort of.
If you had three of them did it in unison, it'd have to be three. I don't know why they would just.
Well, I think they need to bring back the euphonium. The euphonium is the real horn.
The real horn.
The real underrated horn instrument.
There's all sorts of horns out there once you get lucky.
Yeah.
It's true. Anyway, I don't know why I got us on a trombone segue or something.
It's fine. It's fine.
It doesn't take much in my experience. You just even get near the subject of trombones and off she goes. Stuff is.
This is like I always love like the back end of an episode when things just start to grow. And it's just this thing where we know that we're probably going to take some of this out, maybe all of it, but it's just like, or we might keep it.
Fishing for something that might be good.
Yeah,
Trombone solo.
Yeah, and it's just this sort of really nice place where it's like sort of almost behind the scenes. You kind of, I don't know, like by this point you've stopped trying. At least I have, and you're just like saying whatever comes to your head.
Great. Oh, thanks very much, guys. It's been really good to chat to you. Yeah.
I'm going to stop the recording now.
Yeah.